Hey guys, so we're going to take a look at a wide range of crash sounds from Zildjian. We're going to look at the A Zildjian medium thin crash, the K Custom dark crash, and also from the K Custom line, the special dry crash. All three of these are going to be 16 inches. Now, of course, there's going to be a ton of sound samples today, so you'll have a very good idea of what these three specific cymbals sound like. But we're also going to discuss the differences in characteristics in the builds of these cymbals and why they sound like the way they do. That way, if you're looking into any other cymbals from the A or K lines, you'll have a better understanding as to what those other cymbals are going to sound like. Okay, so let's get started with the A crash. As mentioned, this is a medium thin weight. Has a traditional finish, has uniform hammering. What does that mean, uniform hammering? That means that all the hammering indentations on this are evenly spaced out. The vibrations are able to move back and forth along the cymbal more evenly, and this results in a higher pitched cymbal, more overtones, higher pitched overtones as well, and better stick definition. Now, usually on a crash, you're not playing with the tip of the stick directly on the top of the crash, right? You're hitting it on the side, you're crashing the crash. But we will check that out afterwards during the sound samples and see how the stick definition varies between them. So yes, today, this is going to be the brightest cymbal of the bunch, should have the most stick definition and the most overtones of the bunch. One thing to note, remember I said this was a medium thin crash, and this actually calls out the weight on this. A lot of the cymbals from Zildjian, you don't have the option of different weights. There are some cases on the A Customs where you might have two weights available, and on the standard Ks where sometimes they have two weights available. But usually there's just the one weight. But on the A crashes, sometimes you have 4, maybe 5 weights that you can choose from. So what does this mean? What's the difference? What does the weight change? How does that affect the sound of the cymbal? Well, usually a thinner crash is lower pitched and a heavier crash is higher pitched, right? If everything else is the same, that change in weight affects the pitch of the cymbal. But in addition to that, your thin crashes, right? Because they offer these as thin, medium, and rock. And sometimes it's also a heavy. But your thinnest crash will take the least amount of effort for it to open up, right? So as you're starting to hit it a little bit harder, it starts to get louder. You have to hit it so hard for it to like completely be, make that explosive sound. So a heavier cymbal, you have to hit much harder to get to that point. The flip side of that is that a thinner cymbal, you can overpower it more easily by hitting it too hard. So you almost have to pick the weight of the cymbal based on how you are as a player. Are you a heavy hitter? Are you playing very light, very reserved, kind of more like jazz, right? Jazz or metal, kind of. I don't want to have it be those two paradigms, but that's almost kind of a starting point, right? If you're playing really heavy, you might want to start off looking at a medium to rock. If you're playing very light, you might want to start off looking at a thin to medium thin. Okay, so moving on to the K Custom dark. Now, before I mentioned that the A had uniform hammering, that's consistent across all of the cymbals in the A family, while all of the cymbals in the K family have random hammering. So that means that you can have lower pitch, less overtones, lower pitch on those overtones. Now, there's a lot of variety that comes out of how the hammering is done. I find that the deeper the indentation and the more hammering that it gets, that's going to cause it to be lower pitched as well, like further lower pitched. And the deeper indentation is also going to result in less stick definition. Now, you want to kind of keep an eye for this because all the different Ks and all the different types of K customs they have, they do different types of hammering. The normal Ks don't go as deep as this. So you might find a normal K to be a little bit higher pitch than the K Custom Dark. I've also tried K Custom Sessions, and those tend to have a bit deeper indentation than the K Custom Darks. So just kind of keep that in mind. How the hammering is applied. They are not all the same thing. Like across all the different K Customs, they have different amounts of hammering being applied. Now, what makes the custom darks more unique is that they have a second amount of hammering that's applied to it, and this overhammering, as Zildjian calls it, will result in the cymbal being a little bit more trashy sounding. Jumping over to the K Custom Special Dry, this is going to be the lowest pitched that we look at today, the lowest pitch crash, and it's going to have the least amount of overtones and the least amount of stick definition. One of the reasons is you can see they have these massive deep indentations on it, and that's helping to drive all those things down. It's also got this very unfinished look on the top of it. And in total, I think there's actually like 3 different amounts of hammering going on. So this cymbal has had a ton of work. Even though it looks unfinished, it's had a ton of work to get it to this point, to get it to sound like that. Now, I would say this cymbal sounds extremely trashy to me. You know, this sounds a little trashy. This sounds extremely trashy. Zildjian, I think their terminology is to say that it has a very earthy sound. So you'll hear in a minute what this sounds like compared to the others. Just before we jump into the sound samples real quick, so I'm going to be using a pair of Earthwork omnidirectional mics for overheads. That's going into an A-Design specific preamp. There's not going to be any EQ or compression on those 2 tracks, just some phase correction. The other drum tracks will have additional processing though. So I hope that helps you guys, whether you're looking at one of these specific cymbals or more generally at different things from Zildjian. I hope understanding how the construction of the cymbal affects its sound. I hope that helps you out when you're looking at cymbals later on. I, of course, do have other videos coming out all the time. More gear-related stuff for drums and tips on recording drums and drum lessons, the whole gambit of drum-related content. So if you don't want to miss out, then don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, peace.